Not going to sound great today because I do this every 4 years. I do my best. I'm all in to win. So yesterday I did Martha McCullum's show, Martha McCullum's podcast. I did a long podcast with Jamie Weinstein of the Dispatch. And Jamie is a never-Trumper, but he's not rotten. He's just wrong. And his sunk costs are so immense he can't cope with them. And I was just trying to split away a few of the never-Trumpers who have an enormous sunk cost. So I've already posted a link to that. But this morning's New York Post cover is epic. Trump takes out the trash. And of course, Joe Biden called you trash. Most of you people who are listening, it's about 80% R, 20% D and I audience, all right? I don't know what the Canadian and the Israeli audience is, but you're overwhelmingly pro-Trump. And I voted for Trump. And I thought Joe Biden calling the whole country garbage if you support Trump was outrageous, and he needs to apologize on camera, directly on camera, and own it. Not say that he misspoke, because I've listened to it like 30 times. He didn't misspeak. He thinks Trump supporters are garbage. Kamala Harris would not denounce it. Kamala Harris doesn't know how to do anything. As I said to Jamie yesterday, it will be a disaster if she's president. I mean, a disaster if she's president. No one understands Bay Area radicals, San Francisco, Berkeley radicals, unless you've lived in California and been to San Francisco NC. Read San Francisco by Michael Schellenberger. But Donald Trump, of course, who is a gifted politician, like another politician I'm having on today. Boris Johnson will be on today. So it's going to be a wild day at the Hugh Hewitt show, so don't go anywhere. However, Donald Trump heard Joe Biden call his supporters garbage. They went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, put on the trash collector's orange vest, climbed into a trash truck, drove it around, and then he gave an explanation of the trash truck and the vest. Cut number 10.
So this outfit, is when he called us all garbage. How stupid. What a stupid word. That blows deplorable away, don't you think? Of course, I thought irredeemable when she said deplorable or irredeemable. I thought irredeemable was actually worse, but deplorable seemed to catch up. But this garbage stuff blows it away. So I'm in this beautiful plane. I'm enjoying myself. I have a wonderful suit on. And one of my people came in and said, "Sir, the word garbage is the hottest thing right now out there. The hottest thing out there. Sir, would you like to drive a garbage truck?" Now, we're about, 30 minutes from landing. We had to do this pretty quick. I said, it's sort of cool, though, isn't it? Because, And I said, I think that's okay. But, I don't feel comfortable wearing a suit. And they pulled up this garbage truck. I don't know how the hell they did it so fast. I have very capable people. They put a big sign on the truck. Did you see it? I think they showed it. Yeah. And then they said, "Sir, we have a vest." I said, "Well, should I leave my suit on and put it over the vest?" But that doesn't look very good, right? That doesn't look good. So I said, "All right, look, let me take it off." And then I actually said, I climbed into the truck, but so I said, "How the hell do you get into this truck? It's way up high. It's a big one." This was a beauty. I said, "You didn't have to buy it that big, right? You have to get it that big?" They brought this brand new, gorgeous truck, wonderful driver. He looked like Cary Grant in his prime. You know who that is? This beautiful driver. And he drove that big thing up. And I said, "Man, this is bad, because now I have all the cameras are all what? Look at all the fake news. They were most of them. Now, most of them, many of them were there, and I'm saying, oh, boy. One little mistake with these guys and your political career's over. You can't even. So I said, man, if I don't get up there, this is going to be very embarrassing. These stupid people, they'll say, he's cognitively and physically impaired. And I can't do that when I'm alongside of this great athlete. I got to get up to that. So look, the first stair is like up here. I'm 6. So So I had the adrenaline going, and I made it. I made it. And then I gave a little news conference from the front of the, they asked their wise guy questions and everything. And then we drove about 2 feet. I got out, got into the plane. And then I got in the car, and I'm driving over here, and I have this still on. And I come into the arena, and I say, "Where's my jacket? I want to get out of this thing." And they said, "It would be unbelievable if you could wear it on stage." I said, and I said, "No way. I got 25,000 people standing outside. I got all these people here. There's no way I'm wearing it on stage." They said, "Oh, okay, sir." I said, "Get me my jacket." But if you did, it actually makes you look thinner. I said, "Ooh." And they got me. I said, "I want to wear it on stage." When they said I look thinner, I said, "In that case, I'll wear it on stage." I may never wear a blue jacket again. I may go in this. They said that was the word, that was the key. Sir, you look thinner. So anyway, we had a little fun about a very serious subject. We had a little fun about a time where our country is not having a lot of fun because we're not doing well as a country, but we're going to be doing well very shortly. I promise you that.
I got to tell you, we've never asked the American people in a poll, would you prefer that your president was funny and had comedic timing, or would you prefer that they were incoherent and can't do even a softball interview? Because that's part of an undecided voter's calculation. Can I listen to this candidate for 4 years? Now, I don't know if you've listened to Club Shay Shay yet. Kamala Harris disaster pod that Kamala Harris is trying to bury. But when you do, and then you listen to this, you say, this isn't close. This is not close. So I went on with Martha McCallum yesterday afternoon, and I'm upbeat. I hate to say it. I'm feeling like 2012, and I got smashed in 2012. But the former president is a better candidate than the former governor of Massachusetts, current senator, and my friend Mitt Romney. Cut number one on
Hugh,
Martha McCallum.
When you look at the third-party effect in Wisconsin in 2016 and 2020, and you see how slim the margin of victory was in 16, let's put these up. In 16, Trump won by less than 1%. Gary Johnson was at 3.5%. And in 2020, Biden won by less than 1%. And Jorgensen took 1% of that vote. Is there an RFK factor in Wisconsin, and we can show the Michigan numbers as well, that concerns you as someone who I know has said on your show you believe that Trump will win?
I think Trump's going to win, and I'm not concerned about the RFK vote. I think most of that remaining 3% are disaffected Democrats. And I also believe the CNN polls, gosh, I love CNN, but they are outliers when you line them up against every other state poll that I have seen in the last week. I think something is amiss with their sample. I think he's going to win, and I've said this again and again, because not only is he ahead in those states in some polls, in Wisconsin, he's got Eric Hovde. In Pennsylvania, he's got Dave McCormick. And in Michigan, he's got Mike Rogers. There is a great double effect in all three states. All three states. One more cut. Cut number two with Martha.
Hugh, there are more women who vote than men. Is that going to be the story of this election, do you think?
No, again, I think you can find some polls that show the gender gap for men is much larger than the gender gap for women. And those are more recent polls and, of course, don't account for the Rogan effect and the vice president's rather horrible week of press interviews, which continued on Club Shay Shay and other places. Here's what I think about polling. We can find whatever we want, a story we want to write. We can find it in some set of data. What matters to me is inflation. It's 20%. And the key poll, right direction, wrong direction. The best poll for Kamala Harris is that 62% of the country thinks we're going in the wrong direction. That's the best poll. There's never been an incumbent party that won with that kind of a number. And I'm banking on that. I'm banking on the fact Trump is peaking and Kamala is crashing. And I want to say I've got to rely a lot on Joe Biden calling you garbage, because you're not garbage. You're American. There's one American, no matter up or down, race, color, ethnicity. Not one American is garbage. No one, no human being is garbage. And Joe Biden still hasn't apologized. I've got to tell you, Kamala Harris tried to clean up the trash yesterday, and she got asked by a friendly fake news reporter. I don't know who it is, but she got asked, what do you think about this? ABC, cut number 15.
Trump says that while you were making your closing pitch for unity last night, President Biden was calling his supporters garbage. What did you think when you heard President Biden make those comments?
Well, first of all, I think that the president has explained what he meant.
Brett Favre, meanwhile, doesn't agree. Brett Favre, great Green Bay quarterback. Cut number 11. He was with former President Trump in Wisconsin yesterday.
I want to address the comment that Joe Biden made yesterday, or last night, that said the supporters of Donald Trump, us, are garbage. Or garbage. I can assure you we're not garbage. How dare he say that, looking out? I see police officers, teachers, nurses, grandparents, students. I see everyday Americans that make this country great.
Thank you, quarterback Favre. The New York Post cover today is for the ages. Trump takes out trash. Now, some of you wigged out over a set of CNN polls that show Kamala rising in Wisconsin, Michigan. I don't unpack polls, but I talked to Dwayne this morning. I said, what do you make of this? Generalissimo, what do you make of those polls?
So the polls that are freaking everybody out is a CNN in partnership with SSRS polling group. They have Kamala Harris up 5 in Wisconsin and up 4 in Michigan. Now, here's the problem with the Michigan or the Wisconsin poll. The last paragraph of the CNN write-up of this, they refuse to tell you what the ideological makeup is, what the methodology is, whether it's a D+1 base or an R+1. They won't tell you that. Here's all they'll tell you. It includes registered voters, 726 in Michigan, 736 in Wisconsin, and our likely voters are a subset of those registered voters, and we weighted it based upon their likely propensity to vote. And we're going to put an error rate on this of 4.8%.
Oh, my. You mean we got closer to the election and they got further away from specificity?
Yes. So you've got a base of registered voters of 726. The likely voters we're counting is a subset of that. Maybe what, 400 people?
Yeah. What I want people to know is,
and we're putting
the
a 5%
national work that's been done shows that there are a whole bunch of new voters who are not, quote, likely voters because they are turning out to take the country in a different direction.
Right.
And Nevada is telling us that. I don't want to say Nevada's a lock. I don't think anything's a lock. But, man, Republicans have never been up 44,000 votes in ballots returned with 1 day left. Never, ever have they done that. And I got sources. And meanwhile, the garbage comment, they're never going to get rid of it. Tim Walz, by the way, in Michigan yesterday was asked about the garbage comment. Cut number 16.
Did the president's garbage comments that he made, did it damage this campaign?
No, he clarified what he was saying. He was very clear about that. What mattered last night was the vice
president.
president.
Oh, you really think so? Instead of saying, I regret he said that, I don't think people are garbage. I don't. Could have said that. I've got my traditional every 4 years laryngitis starting. I did Jamie Weinstein's podcast for the Dispatch yesterday, Never Trumper. I did Martha McCollum. I did a long phone call with friends that I had to persuade. Don't know if I did it. A couple of Never Trumpers. That's why I did Jamie's podcast. And I then had to go to church yesterday because this is the octave of All Souls beginning on Saturday. And we Catholics pray for those in purgatory, and you can gain a departed soul an indulgence. If you've been to confession and go to communion each day, that you seek the indulgence. So I had a long day yesterday. Also had to make an airport run. Luckily, Selena Zito is out there. She might have laryngitis too. Selena, what was the McCormick rally like last night?
Oh, it was crazy. By the way, I get that fall laryngitis too, and I feel it like trying to creep up on me. I've been like pouring down the honey. Last night was bonkers. I don't know how else to describe it. I went to a rally that McCormick was having, and Nikki Haley was there speaking, and it was.
Nikki is out on the trail with Dave McCormick?
Yep, that was the second event she did with him yesterday. And, I mean, I had to walk several blocks. I had to park several blocks away because of how, I mean, there were cars, people were parked on people's lawns. I mean, it was crazy. And so he had a really, really great event last night.
Well, you know, Selena, those people are garbage. Did you feel safe?
You know, I was driving home from Allentown.
You were in Allentown. If I had a producer, we would be playing Allentown right now in the background. No, don't do that. We can't post it then, but go ahead.
Well, when I was driving home from Allentown, I was taking the back roads, and someone put two garbage cans on their front lawn with Trump signs on them and flags coming out, and I just lost it.
You know, you're not allowed to wear political buttons into the voting booth in many places.
Right.
But I would not be surprised to see a lot of orange vests showing up. I've already voted, so I can't do that. It's going to be like the reverse of the yellow vest movement against Macron a few years ago. People just because I love my trash guys. By the way, I've got the best trash guys in the world, both on both coasts. They're just the best guys in the world. What do you think about this? I mean, just genuinely, how bad was it?
It was really bad. You know, people think in D.C., it's really funny. I saw lots and lots of comments of like, oh, this didn't penetrate. People aren't thinking about it. And I'm telling you, all people were talking about yesterday. And you know, and
wow.
It really hit because it, you know, and first of all, they're pissed because the press is trying to run cover for him.
Yep.
But second of all, of course they think that people that Biden and Harris think that they are trash because they've been called deplorable, they've been called racist, they've been called Nazis. In fact, one guy said to me yesterday, he goes, I'm so confused. Am I Hitler or am I trash? What am I?
Now, Selena, have you listened to Vice President Harris talking with Shannon Sharp on the podcast Club Shay Shay yet?
Only excerpts. I don't know.
So bad. She hit rock bottom. I don't think she can do worse than that. But I asked Jamie Weinstein this yesterday. I did a Mercy podcast yesterday because Jamie's an old friend. He's a never-Trumper. He's been a never-Trumper since 2015. And all I got from him was General Kelly. I said, I don't talk about General Kelly. He's a Gold Star father. I don't criticize Gold Star parents ever, whatever and I don't think the Gold Star parents of Abby Gate have been honored in the same proportion in their remarks as the remarks of General Kelly. And so I do think media is selectively promoting Gold Star parents. But I just want to know what you think. What's your feel for Pennsylvania? Because everyone except CNN has it tied, and we're a little bit skeptical of we're a lot skeptical of yesterday's CNN poll.
I didn't see the CNN poll. What did the CNN poll say?
And at Wisconsin, Kamala up by 5 and up by 4 in Michigan. It's an outlier. And Dwayne, the sample is so small as to be stupid. And I think they just pushed it out for talking points over the weekend.
Yeah, no, I would rather be him than her in Pennsylvania. It's just, it's never been a really great fit for her. You know, I mean, it's always difficult to pull with Donald Trump when he is on the ticket. it just changes things. People are less honest. People don't want to talk. It's not an excuse. It's a reality. You ask any pollster, and they will tell you that.
And I keep trying to make a point. Now, I don't know if you agree with me. I do not recall ever, and I've been doing this since 1976, when Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, they're all on the same cycle, right? So they got two senators up. They got senators up in each state in this cycle every 6 years. I have never recalled when they ran a Dave McCormick, a Mike Rogers, and an Eric Hovde at the same time, and the synergy that creates on the ground among volunteers, our friends at Americans for Prosperity out there, and new voters arrive as a result. And those new voters are breaking over. The first-time voters, I have been told, are double digits plus Trump.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. No, I haven't. I don't remember a time when you had three candidates of that ilk all running at the same time.
They're great. And so did you see any new voters last night?
Oh, I run into new voters all the time. And look at Pennsylvania. I mean, look how many we have new registered Republican voters. It's through the roof. It's in historic numbers.
Now, tell me about Yinzers. I was going back and forth with a Cleveland sports writer not named Terry Pluto last night. Great guy. Don't want to out him. He was saying, it's coming down to the Yinzers. I'm worried. And I said, I know. It's up to the Steelers fans. In 25 years of dumping on the Steelers fans, I have never called them garbage. I don't call any human. I'll call them Steelers fans. Why would they do that?
Why would they do what? Vote for her?
No. Biden is an old, infirm man who spoke his mind.
Yeah.
The filters are down, as people used to say about older parents. When they get so old, they'll say anything.
Right.
The filters go down, and he thinks we're garbage. And we know he thinks we're garbage, but we also know he's old, infirm, and shouldn't be president. Why wouldn't Tim Walz and Kamala Harris come out and say, boy, that was a bad moment. The president is, he's a really old guy, and you've just got to put that aside. Instead of saying he's cleaned up his remarks, which is what they tried to do. And he hasn't cleaned up the garbage.
Well, I mean, the only one that called truth on it was Josh Shapiro.
Yep.
He's the only one. And, what's really fascinating, if you go back, and I did a Wall Street Journal interview with him. I think it was April or May. And I directly asked him this question because I knew it was going to happen. And I said, if Trump wins, are you going to make fun of his voters? And he goes, oh, my God, of course not.
A very good question. Hey, Selena, I got one more question for you. Pressed a little bit for time this morning. I've turned down election night requests for everyone except Salem because I'm doing a 5 a.m. show, which means I've got to be up at 3 a.m., and we're not going to know anything definitive until midnight anyway, and I can't work on 3 hours sleep. So I've got to go to, I'm just turning down media requests, but I'm flattered to get them. People want me to do media, and I'm flattered. I never Trumper yesterday, Jamie Weinstein, who I'm sure you know. Has anyone asked you to be available for national news network on election night?
Yeah, I'm going to be doing the Free Press, which I love.
That's not the national news. I love the Free Press. They are alternative new media. Go ahead. Legacy media.
Fox and Megyn Kelly. So I'll be doing 3 different ones bouncing around.
But not the Legacy Network, because they don't really want you.
No, they don't want me.
They don't want you because you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't want me.
You're trash. You're garbage.
Yeah, I am trash. And, I'm proud of it.
I'm garbage. You're garbage. Dwayne is skinny garbage. Okay, quick last question. Did you hear Trump joke about the vest making him look skinny?
Yes.
You can't put in what God left out. You can't put in timing. My gosh.
Yeah.
Do the people want to have an unfunny, dreary, awful president for 4 years, or do they want to have someone who can tell a joke? What do you think? Last question.
People want to joke. People want to laugh again. They want to be able to laugh again.
Yeah. Elect Trump. Laugh again. That Selena Zito, thank you. Get everything Selena does at selenazito.com. Elect Trump, laugh again, or go to Zito Selena on X. Morning glory, America. I always say that when I'm talking to Dr. Michael Oren, so he realizes, though he's in Israel, the former ambassador to the United States from Israel is in the afternoon, and he's warmed up. My voice is terrible this morning, Dr. Oren, because it's before a weekend. I'm doing like you did during the war, which is everything.
Yeah.
I want to start with the prime minister yesterday saying that Israel has destroyed 80% of Hezbollah's missiles. That's fabulous news. 20% still a lot, but do you believe him?
I have no reason to doubt it. I have no reason to doubt it. It depends what's left of the 20%. Are they long range? Are they accurate missiles? There's all different types of missiles. But I understood that a very large percentage, maybe even many more than 80% of the accurate missiles and long range missiles have been destroyed. And the fact of the matter is, early last week, we had sirens here for 2 days, and we haven't had a siren since then. So that's saying something.
Now, that is great news. Second question. I was asked yesterday, what did I think about Israel's war? I think they've won it. All they got to do is figure out how to withdraw from Lebanon and Gaza. And I think the Iranians got the message because they're naked and afraid. What's your assessment? Have you won the war, but you've got to figure out how to end it?
Yeah, we're certainly at the end of the beginning, put it that way. It's this way. There was a huge event yesterday. Maybe it went unnoted in the United States, and that is Hezbollah said for the first time that it's willing to discuss a ceasefire without having a prior ceasefire in Gaza. Because before it was just the opposite. Hezbollah would say, well, we won't accept a ceasefire unless Hamas accepts a ceasefire. So they're willing now to detach their ceasefire from the Hamas ceasefire. And the United States is hoping they can build on now a Hezbollah ceasefire to bring about a Hamas ceasefire. But apart from that, we can now see how the war in the north can be won. And it can be won like this. Hezbollah now accords with UN Resolution 1701 of 2006, which calls for Hezbollah to withdraw north of the Litani River. But that's just the beginning. Then you have a force that has to enter southern Lebanon, and it can't be UNIFIL. UNIFIL is completely spineless and toothless. It can't be the Lebanese army because they can't muster any strength whatsoever. A good article about it in the front page of the Wall Street Journal today. And so Israel has to reserve the right of hot pursuit, the right to intercede and intervene in Lebanon again, should there be evidence of Hezbollah trying to reconstitute itself near the Israeli border. I think that's about as best as we're going to get right now. And the rest we leave to the Lebanese, because Hezbollah has been very weakened within Lebanon itself, and many people there of different sects, different ethnicities are out for blood.
Dr. Oren, another story that was not much reported caught my eye. The IDF blew up a cavern. It wasn't a tunnel. It was a military base underground. They had to use so much explosives it registered an earthquake. Maybe you felt it. I don't know. Did you feel it?
My daughter did in Lower Galilee. They had an earthquake alert from it. It was that big.
That's a lot of money Hezbollah just flushed and Iran flushed. And then I don't think Americans realize the strategic aspect of the strike on Iran. You want to explain what the IDF did? I mean, we're back to Entebbe-like stuff in the last month.
Yeah, sure. What they did was prove that Iran is utterly vulnerable to any attack, that they have really no air defense, that the Iranian leadership, both military and political, are totally penetrated by Israeli intelligence. We know where everything is. We probably know where everybody is. And that regime is tottering. And I think what we can debate whether Israel could have taken out more targets, whether we should have gotten into the nuclear realm or the oil realm. But the fact of the matter is that this regime is a weak regime, and it is facing tremendous growing internal opposition. And the Israeli opposition humiliated and weakened that regime even further. And you know me, we've said this many times on this program, Hugh, I'm in favor of the Dirty Harry approach to Iran, which is, as you know, go ahead, I won't say the word, go ahead, pull the trigger, make my day.
Make my day.
I would like
now, Dr. Oren, yesterday I did a long podcast with Jamie Weinstein. Maybe you know Jamie, very smart guy, never Trumper from 2015 forward. And I told him, Jamie, you support Israel big time like I do. And, you know, Trump is going to be with Israel. And I think Vice President Harris would be the most anti-Israel president we've ever had. He wouldn't comment on that because it destroys the never Trumper case. But I don't want you to get involved in American politics. I just want, Jamie said to me that Trump talked to Bibi and he told Bibi to have the war won by the time he takes office. Is that reported in Israel? I have never heard that.
Yeah, it was a headline here yesterday.
Do you believe it?
A headline here yesterday. He can say what he wants. I think that we hope to have the war finished if he wins and he is sworn in January. Yes, I hope to have the war over by then. It depends how you define over. I think there's a very clear ending in Lebanon where we reenact actually this revive 1701, and there's a ceasefire, and Israel can say that it truly won this war. With Gaza, it's much more difficult. Gaza, Hamas is still going to be underground. Hamas may still have hostages. We hope not. We don't know. And so we can say the war is over in the sense that major military operations are over in Gaza, but the struggle against Hamas and the struggle to reconstitute, reconstruct the Gaza Strip, and to get the last of our hostages back, and I'm including the hostages who are no longer with us alive, that may go on even longer.
It is clear to me, Dr. Oren, that the Hamas organization in Gaza is utterly destroyed, but Mohammed Sinwar is still alive. He's got to be gotten. You got to get your 50 alive hostages back, 4 of whom are Americans and alive, plus 50 bodies or 55 bodies. And you've got to get Qatar to expel the remaining remnant of Hamas. And I think for years the United States asked Qatar to keep them there, and I think the United States should turn their mind here and dump them. What about those 3 subjects, and what about, does Kamala Harris's rhetoric annoy you, bother you, alarm you?
Okay, wow. Okay, a lot of questions. Rapid fire. We can keep on destroying and knocking off, eliminating, however you want to phrase it, Hamas leaderships. There will be other leaders going to take their place. They actually may be more radical than Sinwar. They may have to prove themselves that they are more Hamas than the previous Hamas guy. We don't know. Our hope is that the leadership of Hamas will fragment and we'll be able to make deals with individual commanders or leaders in certain areas for the release of hostages. Because it's very difficult to conduct negotiations with Hamas generally, but now it's even more difficult because you really don't know who's in charge and who's calling the shots there. And I don't think anybody does. So yes, that struggle has to go on. With Qatar, I want to tear the hair out, Hugh. I don't understand why the United States is not pulling a full court press on Qatar and saying, if you don't,
we've always asked Qatar to keep the Hamas people there, haven't we?
That's it. We're finished. We're pulling our base out of there. The United States doesn't even pay for that base. It's an Air Force base. We're pulling the base out of there. We're closing all the Qatari branches in the United States. We're going to clamp down on you. That's it. We're going to declare you a terror supporting state, because basically that's what they are. And I don't understand. No one actually comes out and does it. Certainly not in this administration. Kamala Harris's remarks are disconcerting. Her failure to condemn that student who accused Israel of genocide, and what I call the string of buts. The buts disturb me. She'll say that she supports Israel's right to exist, certainly Israel's right to defend itself, but there'll be a cause and there's a but. But how Israel defends itself is important. But the Palestinians must have a state. Palestinians must have dignity and security. But the war must end with a ceasefire in Gaza. That's a lot of buts, and it's not just the buts, it's not just the qualification. It's the nature of the buts. I think all 3 of those are pretty much unattainable right now. So that is a source of concern for me. It is.
All right, my very last question, Dr. Orrin, and you've been very generous with your time, is that if Donald Trump wins, do you expect he will be in Israel quickly, and do you expect full-throated support from him?
I expect extensive support from him. I think Donald Trump, to the degree that I know him or I know his past, he's very transactional. He wants to cut deals, and I think that Israel should be open to deals that he wants to cut. I mean, I was an advisor, Hugh, to the Trump peace plan, and I thought it was the best peace plan I'd ever seen, and I've been involved in the process for about 30 years. It was the closest reflection of our actual reality. Most of these peace plans have no connection to our reality whatsoever. But it was a very controversial peace plan here because it basically had a 2-state formula in it. Not the 2-state formula of, say, the Obama and Clinton plan, but it's still a 2-state formula. So the Israeli extreme right rejected it. I think we have to be open to the suggestions of Donald Trump. He made a very earnest effort to try to negotiate a peace between us and the Palestinians. And I think we should take it seriously.
I lied. I had a Washington Post column yesterday I've got to ask you about because of what happened in Edit. I said the West right now, the new West, includes Israel and the UAE and Poland and a bunch of other countries. And along the way, someone said the UAE is not part of the West. I said the UAE did the Abraham Accord. They're not a democracy, but they're part of the West. Do you agree with me on that?
I think that they are West-like. Put it this way. They're West-like. I think one of the definitions of the West would be type of democracy. It would be a certain type of spectrum of rights that are very basic to Western countries. And I don't know if that actually exists in the UAE the way it exists, say, in your state. If you're coming from California or New York, it's going to be different. But certainly there are people who in UAE identifies with the West and is standing by the West in battles that are absolutely fateful for our civilization, including the current battle, because that's what this war is really about.
The point.
It's about a war between the West and its opposite. And it's
that's the point I was making. I mean, China, Russia, Iran, they're the bad guys. They got North Korea in there. They've got a bunch of proxies, and UAE is with Israel and the Americans on that battle whenever we have leadership. Okay, last question. Yesterday I said for the next 2 months, Bibi is the leader of the West. And I don't care if you're a lefty Israeli who hates him or if you're a left-wing Democrat who hates him or anyone who hates him. For the next 2 months, Joe Biden is infirm, and the only guy with fortitude, I won't use a crude term, is Bibi. You agree with that?
I agree that Israel generally is standing up for the West. That's what this war has been about. It's about Israel standing up for the West. And it's a statistic that I've often given you, and I'm going to give it one more time. 365,000 reservists called up, leaving their homes, leaving their families, their jobs, and going to fight for their country would be equivalent to about 20 million Americans, Hugh. That's 4 million Americans more than fought in all World War II. And you got to think to yourself, okay, who in Belgium is willing to pick up a gun and go and fight for Belgium? Who in Spain is going to pick up a gun and fight for Spain? This is the only Western democracy that I know that to this extent is willing to defend itself against an enemy that vitiates everything we hold dear.
Dr. Michael Oren, you've been generous with your time. Keep coming back. I appreciate it very much, Mr. Ambassador. You are a voice of clarity in very confused times. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Noah Rothman, senior writer for National Review. Good morning, Noah. My voice is going what it does every 4 years. It's starting to go because I did podcast after podcast yesterday, hit after hit yesterday after the show. So excuse my voice. I just had on Dr. Oren from Israel. He has great trouble with Kamala Harris' rhetoric about Israel, and he is very confident that Donald Trump will support Israel, though he's a deal maker and he wants to get stuff done. How do you think supporters of Israel, and I am one who's not Jewish, as are you, will be voting in this election? Will it increase significantly their margin of support for Trump than in the past?
I don't know if it'll increase his margin significantly, but because I just don't think foreign policy is much of a voting issue for most Americans, with the exceptions of situations in which American soldiers are coming home in body bags, or if the United States is embarrassed abroad. And I think right now we have several proxy conflicts in which the United States is involved peripherally, but not necessarily directly. So does it matter? Yeah, it matters on the margins. The thing about this election is it's so close that everything could matter, even the stuff that shouldn't matter. Gary Schmendlick slips on a banana peel and costs Donald Trump the state of Pennsylvania. If this is as close as it looks in polling, and we take polling at face
that didn't
value,
actually happen. I want to assure people that didn't actually happen. No, what did you make of Joe Biden's garbage comment and the cleanup, which I don't think is much of a cleanup, occurring on aisle 3?
So I don't think, if you were inclined to be charitable, and I don't think it is very charitable, but nevertheless, if you were inclined to say, well, he was probably just trying to condemn the person whose remarks he was actually talking about in that moment, I don't know what that gives the president. It's not exculpatory. It's an indictment of his chronic absent-mindedness, exactly what got him booted off the campaign in the first place, and what should eject him from the presidency right now. It's not exactly something that'll benefit Joe Biden necessarily to say, well, he just tripped on his words. He trips on his words all the time, and a president's words matter. And there's probably a lot of voters who are more persuadable, just like the joke at MSG, who are persuadable voters who are voting on their own personal interests, tangible, real material interests this year, who aren't going to be persuaded by that. Again, it matters on the margins. And if it matters on the margins, I think between competing garbage comments, which is what we have to adjudicate now in the last week of this election, on net, balance goes to Donald Trump, because who is energized by those remarks. If we're talking about partisan base voters, you're talking about the people who are insulted. Then you've got individuals who are young, male, likely disproportionately exposed to alternative media venues who are already primed to support Donald Trump. And they had a positive impression of him. But they didn't have a negative motivating factor really until now. Now they have Joe Biden going out there and saying, garbage people. And that's likely to get them off the couch. When it comes to the Puerto Rican voters who might be enthused to vote against Donald Trump by virtue of those comments in MSG, you're talking
He did
about the
not
Puerto
make
Rican
them.
population in this
He
country.
didn't. I just, in
Right.
case someone's hearing
And
about
Joe
this
Biden,
for the first time, insult comic who ought not to have been the
insult
stage,
comic.
who's repulsive at every turn. He's a repulsive comic. Should not have been there, but he said them, not Donald Trump. Go ahead.
And we're analyzing this dispassionately, totally bloodlessly, as analysts are wont to do. And if we were to say that, you're saying, okay, well, the Puerto Rican population in this country is large, but disproportionate, but inefficiently allocated in states in electoral terms. The biggest population in a swing state that's Puerto Rican is Pennsylvania. Matters a lot, the state of Pennsylvania. But on balance, I would say the majority of the people who Donald Trump activates by popularizing Joe Biden's quote is more electorally advantageous to him because it's exactly the people he needs to motivate young male voters who are less enthusiastic to turn out than young female voters who disproportionately vote for Kamala Harris. So if you're adjudicating this on balance, I would say Donald Trump has the on balance advantage on this. But again, it's going to be small.
Let me talk to you about never Trumpers. Now, Jamie Weinstein needed somebody to make the case for Trump. I've known Jamie for a long time. He was a guest host on the program until he became Never Trump in 2015. And he's a friend. He's been a guest in my house. I like Jamie. Jamie's moved to LA, and he begged me because he couldn't find anyone to make the case for Trump, because most Trump people, and I voted for Trump already, don't want to bother with the Never Trumpers because they're unmovable. But I did an hour with Jamie last night, even with this voice, to try and tell people the Department of Defense is at 2.9%. It's going to go to 2.5% minimum under Kamala. That's the office, Congressional Budget Office. Her judges will be horrible. Deregulation will not occur. She doesn't have a clue. She can't communicate. By the way, previous question. Have you watched the Club Shay Shay podcast interview with Kamala Harris yet?
No, I have not. There's so many of these alternative media podcasts I have not consumed because it's just hours and hours of your time. And as you know,
my word for it.
In the election year, you don't have it.
Take my word for it. Shannon Sharp tried to be as friendly to Kamala Harris as possible, and she hits bottom in this interview. That's why they taped it last week and dropped it on Sunday night at like midnight. So, do you think any Never Trumpers will change? No, I don't know if you're a Never Trumper or not. I really just genuinely don't know. And so, do you think any Never Trumpers will change on the basis of my arguments about the future security and prosperity of the United States?
I think that's where most skeptical Republicans of Donald Trump are, and I think that's frankly why they're skeptical of Donald Trump. Those who have a clear-eyed view of how his first term went and what they like about his first term are apprehensive about the second term because the architects of those successes are unloved in Donald Trump's orbit. The feeling is quite mutual. That apprehension is real, and it doesn't do anybody on the Republican side any good to dismiss it. It is based not in affect and emotion and sentiment and personal status, as they so often claim, the people who are critical of Republican skeptics of Donald Trump. It is based on their analytical assessment of his behavior and the personnel around him who will make policy. Totally
No, wait, I got to push back, Noah. I know John Kelly's gone. Jim Mattis doesn't like him. I know that. But Mike Pompeo is out campaigning for him. Robert O'Brien is out campaigning for him. The team that John Radcliffe is DNI. Rick Grinnell is acting DNI. They're out campaigning for him. They're close to him on the campaign. I'm very confident of his national security team going forward.
Okay. Well, I'm not necessarily as confident in that team. I will be surprised if Mike Pompeo, for example, is let back into the fold and has a portfolio in the Trump administration that's relevant and matters. But I'm willing to be surprised. Nevertheless, to your question, the Harris campaign, we must assume, sees in its data some softness in these Republicans. That's who they've been appealing to, rhetorically only, over the last couple of weeks. But their appeals are not very creative. They're certainly not conceding any territory to ideological right-wing conservatives who are patriotic, want to see a confident, extroverted American presence on the world stage, want to see limited government at home. She's not giving them anything to vote on. So while she knows they exist, she's not giving them anything to hang their hats on in order to become Democratic voters for the first time in their life. So I don't necessarily. So while I think they exist, sure. Is she making inroads among them? I would be surprised. And if you had to default one way or the other, I would think they, along with most undecided voters at this stage, will lean back on their priors and say, well, listen, my political and policy preferences are not going to be well served by this Democratic administration because it wasn't served by this Democratic administration. It's, if past performance is indicative of future results, and I think that's also logical. That's where most.
Noah,
of
do
these
you think
establishment
Kamala Harris
Republicans
has the
disappoint.
minimum skills to be president? This is my key point with everyone. There's a minimum set of skills to be president. One of them is that you be able to communicate with the American people at least some of the time. Does she have the minimum skill set?
No, she doesn't have the minimum basic skill set, and I don't think that's necessarily the first quality she doesn't have that I would look for in a president. I don't think she has the judgment or or cleverness or adroitness to navigate a situation in real time that is complex and dangerous and requires that kind of confident thinking rooted in experience and intellectual adeptness. She just lacks it. But the problem here for people who are still on the fence about this election is that while they may concede that Donald Trump has the skill set to navigate a thorny environment that requires really, adept maneuvering, they don't think he's qualified to be president because he abdicated his oath of office, Hugh. I know you don't agree.
Well,
with
Jamie
that,
kept bringing that up,
but
and
a
I
lot of
kept
people
saying,
do who are skeptical.
that is an opinion. A lot of people bring that up to me. That is an opinion based upon the 1-6 committee, and I refuse. I absolutely, because I'm a lawyer. Anything produced by a process that lacks basic minimal due process safeguards, and Nancy Pelosi removed all of those, does not persuade me. I want to ask you one more question, though, so don't go anywhere.
Republicans have rejected the Blue Ribbon Commission, which would have been the bipartisan thing that they didn't want to have. They wanted to
But
have
that's
results
not
that were
Trump's.
partisan.
That's not Trump's fault because they did not like the makeup of the Blue Ribbon Commission. The Blue Ribbon Commission could have been done, and Nancy Pelosi ought never to have done the 1-6 Commission because it was flawed from the beginning, partisan hackery at its worst. And I like Liz Cheney. No, I've been begging people who know the former president to make judges part of the pitch again, and it isn't because there's no vacancy on the Supreme Court. It got him elected in 2016. I'm absolutely convinced that the vacancy created by the untimely death of Scalia and held open by Mitch McConnell got him elected. So judges they're not talking about him. Do you have any sense of how radical Kamala Harris's judges would be and how different they would be from Trump's judges?
I think they would be quite radical. We can't know because neither candidate has really elaborated on their thoughts on the judiciary in this race. There's a lot of things that are still big question marks, like both candidates' approach to China on a geostrategic level as opposed to trade. That's still pretty much a black box, and it's a tragedy that it is. I think it would have been very beneficial if Donald Trump would have made that an issue by putting out, for example, another list of potential judges. I'm thinking of my colleague, for example, Dan McLaughlin, who's incredibly sharp, and the judiciary is one of his foremost issues, and he's still uncomfortable with the Republican ticket. I think he'll manage to move himself in that direction, but he'd be far more energetic and enthusiastic for this ticket if it was plainly clear that there would be a set of constitutional originalist judges on a list of Federal Society approved practitioners who would be, somebody that they would pick for seats on the federal judiciary. That's not forthcoming. And one of the things that is giving people pause on the right who are curious about this issue is that the Federalist Society has really fallen out in MAGA world. It has, for the loudest members of this group, they just lack the gumption and the will to do what is necessary to affect the kind of public policy they want to see from the bench, an activist bench. a la the Democratic side, has become a desideratum for a particular type of very activist pro-Trump Republican, and that turns off constitutionalists and originalists. Is it a primary
I
voting
agree.
issue?
I'm an originalist,
No,
and
probably
I do
not.
not want activist judges, but I do want, James Ho, and I do want. We've got David Strauss. We've got, of course, the wonderful Twitter judge who's no longer a Twitter judge because he joined the Fifth Circuit, Don Willett. There are others like them that they could have named, but I think the fear. If I haven't talked to Chris LaCivita about this or Susie Wiles. I think they were afraid about talking about judges. Would have brought up Dobbs, and they're afraid of Dobbs, and they shouldn't be afraid of Dobbs. But I have no influence. But that's what I think
No, that's a reasonable
logic
thing.
is.
That's a reasonable thing to think about, and just about any judge would exacerbate that tension because they probably have a pro-life record, or at least would be inclined to support legislation that would defer to the states, and that's what Democrats don't want. They want a national abortion ban or national abortion law that would codify Roe and expand Roe. So you're probably right on that. My fear, and perhaps it's slightly unfounded as you suggest, but my fear is that this movement is deferring much more towards the J.D. Vance side of the ledger, which is not pro-limited government, which wants expansive government, which wants activist government, which is far more populist and promises and argues not that the federal government is doing something wrong under Kamala Harris and therefore we should not do it, but rather the federal government is doing something wrong under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and therefore we should do its opposite. The wrong people are benefiting from this disbursement of federal largesse.
We're out of time, no, but you've just persuaded me to try and book J.D. Vance because I know J.D. pretty well. He is an originalist. He is not an activist. He believes in Congress legislating, not agencies. And I think he might, but that's a good concern to have articulated. I hadn't thought about that. I think that's a very good concern, and I will try and do that. Jay, thank you, Noah Rothman. Thank you so much. Go over and listen to Noah on The Editors most days. Read his work at National Review Online. Thank you, Noah Rothman. You know what makes me crazy, America? I was trying to look up Derek Anderson, who's running in Virginia's 7th Congressional District. I was trying to find via Google his campaign website so you can help him. And the search machines are so rigged against Republicans. I can't find it. Derek, welcome back. What is your campaign website so people can help you?
Hey, Hugh, thanks for having me. Yeah, folks want to go check me out or help out, they can go to DerrickAnderson.com. That's Derrick, D-E-R-R-I-C-K, Anderson.com.
Now, I want you to review. I think this is one of the most important races, not only because you're a Green Beret, not only because you're a great candidate, not only because Virginia actually needs to be red, but because your opponent is a menace. Would you tell us about this race?
Yeah, Hugh, what we're seeing is there's a stark contrast between me and my opponent, right? I'm running against Vindman. We all know his background. He's focused on his past. He's focused on his revenge tour with President Trump and doubling down on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's failed policies. Well, we're focused on the future. And we're focused on making life more affordable here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and here in the 7th Congressional District. We're focused on making our communities safe and making sure we have the border secure, taking care of our veterans. And what's fascinating about this race, and I'm sure, Hugh, in your Google searches, you saw my opponent is, he's outspent me 10-1 in this race, and yet every single poll shows that we're tied. So this is going to be a close race. That's why it's so important. Folks, do get out and vote in the 7th Congressional District here in Central Virginia. But what's interesting about it, he's not only lied about me and my positions, but he's lied about himself. He's lied about his military record. He's lied about his rank. He's lied about his time overseas, saying that he used weapons of war on the battlefield when he very well know he didn't. And that's why he won't take any single interview. In fact, there was a local station recently, Hugh, that did a profile on me. And at the end of the profile, they said they contacted my opponent multiple times for about 3 weeks. He refused to come on their show. And in fact, only would go on their show and do a profile if Hakeem Jeffries was sitting next to him. So this is the kind of person that's trying to represent my hometown where I grew up, where my mom owned restaurants. My family lives all around here. So there's a stark difference between my opponent. He's focused on his past while we're focused on the future.
Derek Anderson, Vindman is a horrible candidate. I've watched this. I don't know what Democrats were thinking when they thought they could parachute in one of the worst appointees in the White House. I don't know if he was inherited from Obama. He is a leftist. I know he served his country in uniform. I appreciate that. I'm not sure about his record. Tell us about your record in uniform.
Yeah, Hugh. So, I grew up here in Spotsylvania County, worked at my mom's restaurants before getting an ROTC scholarship to Virginia Tech. Go Hokies. And becoming the first person in my family to graduate from college. I started off as an infantryman in the United States Army, earning my Ranger tab, and then going to Iraq for 15 months as part of the surge. I then had the great honor of going up to Arlington National Cemetery with the Old Guard and doing about 150 or so funerals in Arlington National Cemetery. Hugh, I know you're a big fan. I served there with Senator Tom Cotton, which is a small world. But then I went on to become a Green Beret. I did 5 deployments as a Green Beret team leader, including Afghanistan, Bahrain, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan. I ended up getting out of the Army and going to law school and clerking for 2 federal judges. And what got me into this race, Hugh, was seeing the botched withdrawal in Afghanistan. As we all saw it on TV, these people that were clutching to the side of airplanes, babies being thrown over barbed wire, seeing 13 U.S. service members killed at Abbey Gate, and the current administration had no accountability or nothing to say about it. So, as someone who lost 5 of my guys in Afghanistan, I was pretty disheartened by that. So, I decided I wanted to serve in a new capacity. That's why I'm running for Congress. And again, I encourage all your folks that are listening or watching to go to DerekAnderson.com. We have a great opportunity to flip a seat here to make sure life is better here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Derek Anderson, I'm glad you brought up Afghanistan. I spent most of yesterday speed reading Boris Johnson's new memoir called Unleashed, because Boris is coming up at the end of the show, and I spent a lot of time on he was prime minister during the Afghanistan debacle, and he writes in it, says, Biden set the Afghan withdrawal for 9/11. Biden's statement sniffed out the last remaining Afghan face in the U.S. and the West. I'll talk to him about that. But how did you feel about the president when he just showed up and said, we're leaving by 9/11, then he moved up to August 31st, and everyone remembers the disaster? We left Americans, green card holders, and SIV-eligible Afghan allies behind. You were probably part of the effort to get some people out. Everyone I know who worked in Afghanistan, who served there, got called by somebody, Michael Waltz, Tom Cotton, et cetera. How did you feel when Biden just announced, we're quitting?
Hugh, for me, it was a mixed bag of emotions, right? Because I lost some of my guys over in Afghanistan. You think about all the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears that we poured over in Afghanistan, working alongside the Afghan army and the Afghan special forces, and you see 20 years of war go down the drain. And I think what was also really disheartening, Hugh, is seeing every year since that's happened. We saw the last anniversary of the withdrawal. We saw the Taliban marching our vehicles, our airplanes, all of our equipment down the streets of Kabul. And it was all at the hands of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And we look at, from the international stage, Hugh, we look at what's happened in Israel when Hamas attacked Israel. We see what's going on in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah. We see with Iran's firing missiles into Israel. We see Ukraine being invaded by Russia. We see the cyber attacks being done by China. Look, all of this is to show that weak leadership has an impact. And right now, the current administration, the vice president, who was the last person in the room, as she said, during the Afghan withdrawal, is now trying to have a promotion. So, these elections truly do have consequences. And we see that this weak and feckless leadership has led to chaos and the world on fire right now. So that's why this election is so important, why I'm running for Congress, and why we need to make sure we have strong veterans like Mike Waltz and Senator Cotton up in Washington, D.C. to make these tough decisions.
Now, Derek Anderson, tell people where you're. I voted early in Virginia, so has my wife. Hung cow we could vote for, and there's a chance. But our Democratic congressman's got a D plus 30 district. There's just no chance there. Tell us about the 7th. Where is it? What's the partisan divide? And how can people help you in the closing stretch? I don't know if early voting goes on over this weekend. You tell me.
Yeah, Hugh. So early voting is going on now. In fact, folks in the following counties in Eastern Prince William, Stafford, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, King George, Caroline, Orange, Culpeper, Madison, and Greene, and a slither of Albemarle County, about 150 homes. They can all go vote today, all throughout the week and into Saturday. So we've still got a few more days of early voting. And what I've been encouraging folks here in the 7th Congressional District is to go vote early. And then once you're done voting, go text, call, drive to their homes, grab 10 people, get them out to the polls. We've got people at every single early voting location to make sure you have a sample ballot. We've got food, water, we've got all types of things. So go and early vote. Most early voting locations are open around 9 to about 4:30. And that will go on all the way through Saturday. And then if you do choose to vote on election day, make sure you have a plan. Don't be like my mom, who in the past has always waited till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon on election day, and I have to go drag her out of the house to go vote. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you get everyone you can to go vote, because this election is truly going to be impactful, not only for the United States, but here in the Commonwealth of Virginia and here in the 7th Congressional District.
How does the early vote by registration look for you, Derek Anderson?
Yeah, so early voting is looking awesome. It's really phenomenal to see that people in the 7th Congressional District are getting out there and voting early. We've always seen in the past, the opposing party has typically done better, but what we're seeing time and time again, day and day, is that early voting numbers continue to climb. We're seeing it in a lot of our rural counties that folks are getting out early and voting, which obviously those are some of our stronger counties. So early voting is looking phenomenal, but we can always do better. And that's why, we have these last couple of days up until Saturday for folks to get out and vote. So if they have any questions about early voting, they can go to our website, which is derekanderson.com/vote. It has all the early voting locations. It has all of the times. And I encourage people to go take a look at our website. And I hope to earn your support, whether it's on early voting and or on election day, to be your next congressman here in Virginia's 7th Congressional District and be able to say that I get to represent the people that raised me.
Derek, thank you for coming out. I want everyone to remember derekanderson.com. Send him some money if you can as well, because it's a flood of dark money. They love Vindman, because Vindman is just going to go in there and try and impeach Trump and mess up everything. I just don't trust the guy. I do not trust him on anything. I don't trust his brother. I don't trust his sister-in-law. His sister-in-law, of course, very infamous for her tweets. But Derek Anderson, trusted, loyal, and a native of the 7th Congressional District. Hey, but last question. Glenn Youngkin been there with you and hung cow?
Oh, yeah. Glenn Youngkin hung the entire we had Winsome just recently here, our Attorney General, who's been very busy, as we've seen, with the Supreme Court ruling yesterday. But we've had Glenn Youngkin has been very, very gracious with his time. He's gone to church with us. He's gone to events with us. I can't thank our governor enough for being out here and supporting me.
No, I think Virginia 7th could be a one-vote race. It's going to happen. We've had 10 vote races for Congress before. We've never had a one-vote race. Might be Virginia 7th. Don't miss the chance to vote for Derek Anderson. Derek, thank you. Good luck in the closing kick. DerekAnderson.com. Follow him on Twitter, Derek4, F-O-R-V-A. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks.
Generalissimo, do we have any early numbers on Virginia?
We do. I don't have any data on Virginia as far as early voting. I do have on Arizona. I do have in Nevada and Pennsylvania, but no, there's not a lot of data that's been released on Virginia. There's there's a ton out of Florida.
Sean Trendy is the most reliable guy, PhD lawyer, absolute brainiac. He says early voting is fun, doesn't mean anything because you don't know if they're cannibalizing your own vote. You don't know if they're new voters because unless you know if they're new voters, you can't tell, and you still don't know who the new voter is voting for. The gender gap is big on both sides, and Trump seems to be appealing to blacks, and so we don't know if African-American men are actually turning out for Trump, except in Nevada, where it's locked up. It looks like it's locked up, right?
In where? In Nevada?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It looks like it's locked up in Nevada. And actually, in Nevada, there is actually a grid out there. There is data out there from Clark County voter frequency. And in Clark County, it looks like the GOP holds an 8-point edge among the lowest propensity voters.
That is so. Stop right there. We're out of time. But I'm just telling you, Sam Brown could be the upset special.
Oh, absolutely he could. Absolutely.
Hung Cow used to be my upset special. I think Hung Cow can win. But if you said Sam Brown versus Hung Cow had the harder path, but Sam Brown really had the hardest path.
And don't overlook Arizona. The Republicans are surging in Arizona in early vote, too.
Well, again, Kerry Lake's got a hard path. But I think, if you haven't voted yet in Nevada, and I'm on live right now in Nevada, get out there and vote for Sam Brown. The man gave all. Everything you could give short of your life to serve this country. Go and vote for Sam Brown for Senate in Nevada. Former Missouri Senator Jim Talent joins me. He's watched a lot of elections in his life. How do you feel about this one, Senator Talent?
I have watched a lot of elections. I would be surprised if Trump does not win. I put the odds probably 70-30. But the reason I think we're all wondering is because it's a close election, which means it's going to be decided by people who walk in there, breathe a big sigh, and say, well, I guess I'll vote for X, right? And so those of us who are much stronger partisans just are going to worry all the way through Tuesday until we get the results.
Do you have any data, any whispers, any rumors from, no, I don't want a rumor. I want whispers from Team Trump about how the new voters are breaking?
No, I don't. I look at, you talk about vibes or the feel of an election. I think the trend lines of the polls are very good for Trump. I think we cannot forget two things. The fundamentals are that people are hurting and that the Democrats own the policies that are hurting them. And then the second point is the Trump campaign has had a much more consistent, credible, and relevant message, which is things were good under Donald Trump. They've been bad the last 4 years, and they can be good again. And I will say that although this has been fun watching, the garbage truck today, and I think they did a good job with this week, I want the Trump campaign to close the last 3 days with that message that I just gave you, because that's the one that's going to move people in the middle.
They're better for us on the economy. They just are. We can't have another 4 years of Democrats running the economy. Senator, I'm not from Mars. I'm a realist. But I think a lot of people are going to say Joe Biden wants Kamala Harris to lose. There's no other explanation for stepping on her story. What do you think?
Well, there is another explanation, which is that Joe Biden is very substantially impaired and isn't quite certain what he's doing. I mean, nobody wants to be uncharitable towards him. But look, on a personal level, are Biden and the people around him happy about the last couple months? No. And this is why I think if she does lose, I'd like to say when she does lose, I don't think it's going to be like it was with Hillary, where everybody tried to find reasons other than Hillary, everybody in the Democratic Party, why she lost. I think she's going to take it if she does end up losing. I think they're going to blame her and her campaign.
Let me ask you about, I did a Never Trumper interview yesterday with Jamie Weinstein because I like Jamie and I wanted to make an appeal to Never Trumpers. Please put the interests of the country ahead of your hatred of the former president. We need the military buildup. We're down. I mean, just read the Wall Street Journal yesterday. We cannot have her radical judges. Do you think any of them will change their mind, Jim?
I think a lot of them already have changed their minds in the sense that they've decided, look, they're not going to change their minds in the sense they love Donald Trump, but I think a lot of them have already decided that she's just impossible and the Democrats are just impossible. And, when I talk to folks like that, I say that Trump is a problem solver who is pursuing America's national interests abroad and who believes very broadly in peace through strength. I think he really does. And that's the reason his foreign policy was so successful. Now, the one thing that does frustrate me sometimes is when people say, well, there were other people who did that despite Trump. Now, you and I know that foreign policy is decided by the president. And we also know that Trump is not the kind of guy to sit there passively and let other people make decisions for him. The foreign policy in the first Trump term was Trump's foreign policy. And it dragged us in the 21st century where China policy was concerned. You heard what Michael Oren said. We actually were close to peace in the Middle East. And Trump, let's remember, armed the Ukrainians and put heavy sanctions on Nord Stream 2. He knew who Putin was. He just didn't want to be occupied that much in Eastern Europe when the real action and the real threat to America is in the Far East and in the Middle East.
Next hour, I'm talking with Boris Johnson about his book, Unleashed. He writes a little bit about Trump, funny stuff, but he also said he played a blinder by liquidating Soleimani. I'm not sure what that means. I think it means an unexpected move in cricket. But that's what he is known for in Boris's book, killing Soleimani. That, to me, is decisive. He kills people who wants to kill Americans. The Houthis are not going to shoot at our ships if Donald Trump is president.
His Middle Eastern policy, I was surprised to see it. I mean, I didn't think he'd be that good. It was brilliant. He not only got the strategy right, which is the object of the policy ought to be to constrain Iran, but there were brilliant tactical moves, and not just getting Soleimani, but recognizing Jerusalem as the capital, recognizing the Golan Heights as part of Israel. I mean, in fact, even sending his son-in-law there to do the negotiation, which I thought originally was an amateur move. But you look at that. Look, what does everybody in the Middle East do? They all work through their relatives. I mean, Trump showed through that move, by sending Jared there, that he understood how relationships work in the Middle East. And so it's
and
like, okay.
The strong horse versus the weak horse matters too. I do not understand how anyone concerned about our troops in Jordan or our sailors in the Red Sea or the Gulf Sea do not vote for Donald Trump. I just don't understand it. Jim Talent, thank you, my friend. Good to always talk to you, Senator. Greetings to all the garbage people out there who Joe Biden insulted because you want to vote for Donald Trump. I want to welcome on Senate Minority Whip for the Republicans, John Thune, another garbage person like me because he's going to support Donald Trump. Senator, it is great to have you here. I want to get to substance in a hurry, but I want to begin by letting the audience know I've got no voice because I've been in Ohio for Bernie Moreno and in Pennsylvania for McCormick. I'm doing Never Trumper podcast to try and persuade 1%, but it's nothing like you. This is all in October. You've been many times to Ohio. I hope you got to Warren. You did a bus trip with Bernie Moreno. You've raised money for Kerry Lake and Bernie and Sam Brown in Nevada, for Dave McCormick, who I did an event for last week. You've been in Michigan with Mike Rogers. I won't go to Michigan. Ohio State thing. You've been in Indiana with our friend Jim Banks. You've helped Tim Shee, who's coming up later on the show. You've helped Deb Fisher, of course, your incumbent. They're trying to take out in a secret campaign. Are you exhausted?
Well, I feel a little bit like you, Hugh. You know, my voice is a little shot, got a little bit of a head cold going on, but all for a righteous cause. And you know, your Buckeyes have a big one this weekend. So as you went through Ohio, I'm sure you were trying to give some good vibes to the.
Well, you know, I live and die with the Buckeyes, but they're in Penn State. They're playing in Happy Valley. And I kind of think if the Buckeyes lose, Happy Valley will be happier, and that might help Trump. I don't know. I got to ask you the key question.
Yeah.
Mark Thiessen, my colleague at the Post, just wrote, there are almost a quarter of voters in swing states still uncommitted. They are mostly reluctant Trump voters. My best argument is that our men and women in uniform are under daily fire in the Gulf, in the Red Sea, in Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. They are not being supported by Biden-Harris. The defense budget at 2.9% of GDP is going to fall to 2.4% of GDP. If you care about the people who care enough to put on the uniform and go in harm's way, you got to vote for Trump. What's your best argument?
Well, I think that's a good one. I think national security is always front and center, and any of these, you know, in any election, and this one I think is no exception. Security, and is my neighborhood safe? Is my community safe? Is my country safe? Is my world safe? And you have to. The answer, no. I mean, you look at the world's on fire. A lot of places in the United States has interest, and of course, this administration has projected nothing but weakness. And it's not our strength that tempts our adversaries; it's our weakness, and that's what you see globally. And in the U.S., as you point out, we are underfunding our military. And we're, you know, we need to be positioning our country in a way that keeps not only our country safe, but our neighborhood safe. And that goes back to the southern border, which also should be a huge issue. I mean, I think when people vote, Hugh, to me, the two issues are open borders and high prices. I mean, that's what the Democrats have given you now for the last 4 years. You want more of the same, you know, vote for Harris. But if you want a different direction, and this right track, wrong track number to me really spells, too, that I just think, in the end, I think these undecideds break our way. I believe that because I think those are the issues here and motivate them.
Now, Senator Thune, I'd like to remind people you both won and lost races, and you kept on going. Donald Trump has both lost and won races, and he keeps on going. When Joe Biden called Trump supporters garbage, I was kind of stunned. It took him a full almost 24 hours to try and walk it back because I don't know if the president was being stubborn or what. How did you react to that?
Well, I think the way most Americans did. It was analogous to what, you know, Hillary Clinton said, calling Republicans the people who vote for Trump deplorables. This is sort of the game plan of the Democrats. And I think this is how they view a lot of the people that we represent. And I got to believe at the end of the day that that's one of those issues too that is really going to motivate that handful of undecided voters who could decide in the end this election. But it is a huge faux pas. It's the problem for the Democrats when they roll Joe Biden out. You know, he's going to say crazy stuff like that. But it couldn't have been worse timing for them, better timing for Trump and the Republicans, because I think it just reminds the American people of the view, the lens through which a lot of Democrats view Republican voters across this country.
Now, Senator Thune, I've told people for years, since 2015, Donald Trump is the best interview in America. I interviewed him 2 weeks ago, same thing, made news, always answers the questions. Gifted event with Brett Favre in Wisconsin yesterday, just genius. But you need to be able to do comedy, which is very hard. I don't know if you've watched Kamala Harris sit down with Shannon Sharp yet on Club Shay Shay. Did you listen to that?
I haven't seen it yet. Sounds like I should.
It's the worst. Of all of her bad interviews, it's the worst. Shannon had a good one. I am curious. You worked with her as a colleague for 4 years. She's presided at key moments in the Senate for the next 4. Does she have any skills to be president at all?
Well, if she does, I haven't seen them, and I don't think she's displayed them on the campaign trail this year. But you know, Donald Trump is an amazingly gifted, communicator and obviously a candidate for office. He relates. He's got a relatability issue that I think average people across this country respond to. Having somebody like Brett Favre, and by the way, I'm a lifelong Green Bay Packer fan, as you know, is I think going to be enormously helpful in places like Wisconsin. I was there on Tuesday. It does feel really good for Eric Hovde, for our Senate candidate there, and I think it feels good for Trump because same reason. I think these voters, when they sit down and analyze these two candidates, come to that same conclusion. We got to make a choice about who is going to represent our country when it comes to important issues like national security, economic security, the border, energy policy, energy dominance. There couldn't be two more different visions for the future of the country, or two more different candidates in terms of what they bring to our country at a time when we really need strong leadership.
Senator Thune, you need the Senate to go Republican. We're counting on Governor Justice being Senator Justice. Tim Shea is going to join me at the bottom of the hour just to seal that deal. I feel good about that. But I also feel good about McCormick and Bernie Moreno and Eric Hovde, and they're all in swing states, and you've all been out there for them. I'm beginning to think Sam Brown's numbers must look pretty good because the Democrats have dumped millions in there. Carrie Lake is beginning. I don't know if she's ahead, but she's at least tied. And I'm not writing off Larry Hogan or Hung Kao yet, much less Nella Domenici. What do you think?
Well, I've been, as you said, been with all of them, talking to all of them, and it feels really good. And I think those Sunbelt states, too, are moving in the right direction. The numbers, early vote numbers coming out of Nevada are pretty unprecedented, really, if you look at 2022, 2020. And our folks, our low propensity voters, and the effort being made to get them out to bank those votes, I think has been successful. And so I think it could be a really good night, Hugh. I mean, these are razor thin races. We could win them all, we could lose them all. Hopefully we win more than we lose. But I think there's a pathway there for us to have a really, really good night. And a lot of it depends, of course, on how Trump does at the top of the ticket. He's headed out west today. He'll be in those states, and I think our candidates benefit from that every time he comes around.
Now, I want to ask you a policy question, Senator. You're the whip. You're number 2. The leader's going to retire. We're going to need to have a plan on day one. If the Trump success is as we expect, as the Republicans get the Senate and Mike Johnson holds the House for Republicans. The reconciliation process is complicated. It usually takes a long time, but we got to get tax cuts extended. We got to get school choice in there. We got to build the wall. Are you ready to go on day one to write a budget and then the follow-on reconciliation bills that can pass with simple majorities?
Well, we have to be, because as you point out, there's a ton of stuff to get done. It has to get done quickly. I mean, first thing is we've got to get Trump's people in place. So get his team, assembled quickly, hit the ground running that way. But then, yeah, I mean, it's taking care of business, and budget reconciliation offers us an opportunity, if we have the trifecta, the House, Senate, and the White House, to do a lot of things. The Democrats dramatically expanded the scope of what's allowable through the budget reconciliation process, and we've got committees looking at things that we can do with respect to the border, things that we can do with respect to energy, obviously tax policy. But yeah, those wheels have been in motion for some time. A lot of those conversations with the relevant committees and trying to figure out as we, and talking with the budget committee where it originates, Lindsey Graham chairs that committee, if we get the majority, about how we proceed to make sure that we take advantage of an opportunity to do really meaningful things for the country and things that have been need to get done and things that we've been waiting to do for a long time. We don't get that many opportunities.
Last question, Senator. We have less than a minute. I lived in California during Kamala Harris being AG. I heard from an ever-Trumper yesterday, oh, she's not really radical. Politico, the lefties at Politico are saying, oh, she's really trans. No, she's not. She's an ideologue. You worked with her. Am I right or are they right?
No, I think you're right. I mean, she truly really believes this stuff. And when she talks about, she's advocating getting rid of the filibuster, for doing the Green New Deal, for codifying Roe. I mean, you name it. This is somebody who has extreme views and completely out of the mainstream of America. So we got to win, Hugh. We got to get this done.
Senator-to-be Tim Sheehy joins me. I never count my chickens before they hatch, Tim Sheehy, but I just talked to John Thune. Sounds pretty good in Montana. Update us on your Senate race, please.
Well, I appreciate your confidence, but I'm a superstitious guy, and we still got 5 days to go. And there was a poll that came out recently that showed us tied. Now, I know folks don't want to believe that, but we got to keep pushing to the finish line, and that's what we're doing. We got Senator Tom Cotton coming out tomorrow. We're going to do a few campaign events around the state, and we're going to campaign through the weekend all the way to the finish line. But it's looking good. We've had a consistent but narrow lead here for the past few months. Can't take that for granted. We're gonna campaign like we're behind for the next 5 days. Grassroots around the state, as well as just work on the phones, making sure we continue to raise that money. And what that money does at this point, we're not buying TV commercials. We're paying door knockers, ballot harvesting operations, making sure we're poll watching. That grassroots, on the ground, door-to-door campaign to finish strong.
Let's give people your campaign website, Senator, because you are the key to a majority. The absolute insurance policy. Jim Justice is going to win in Virginia, and we need you, and everything else after that is gravy, but we need you so people can contribute to their dollars to get an insurance policy on the Senate. What is your website?
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that, Hughes. So timformt.com, TIMFORMT.com. And as you said, and to remind the viewership here, the White House is critical. Of course, we want Donald Trump to win the White House. But if he doesn't have a Senate, they're going to impeach him day one. My opponent, John Tester, voted to impeach Trump twice, voted against the entire Trump agenda when he was in, and has voted for the entire Biden-Harris agenda since they've been in power. So if Trump wins, we have to have the Senate. If he doesn't win, we absolutely have to have the Senate as a firewall against more of this progressive craziness going on. So it's, as you correctly articulated, it's an insurance policy. Not only is it an insurance policy against craziness happening from the left, it's an insurance policy to protect our Constitution, because they've said very clearly they want to eliminate the filibuster in the Senate, add 2 more states, D.C. and Puerto Rico. That's 4 more Democrat senators. Then they want to, quote unquote, reform the Supreme Court, which, as you and I well know, means pack it with progressive justices so they can rubber stamp a progressive agenda. So there's so many reasons
Senator
why.
to be Sheehy, I just had John Thune on, and Senator Thune comes from a neighbor state to you. He spoke at length about being out in Montana with you, and we also agreed national security is you've been shot at by bad guys. Our fleet is being shot at by the Houthis every day. Our men in uniform, soldiers in Jordan, Iraq, Syria, are being shot at every day by the enemy. And we've run out of air defense missiles, or almost have. We have not got enough ships. These guys are exhausted. I got family in the Gulf, so it's personal for me. But you're a veteran. You've been shot at. You've got your friends still there, I'm sure. Some of them are generals probably now. What about national security and the need for a Republican Senate and the need for Trump to win?
Well, I'm not that old, Hugh. I appreciate the nod, but most of my friends are commanders. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, what's going on with our national defense is disgraceful. And this is a long-standing problem that has gotten exponentially worse in the last 3.5 years. And the number one problem is we don't have leadership, civilian leadership, focusing on combat lethality for our military. Our men and women, their number one priority must always be the ability to close with and kill the enemy. That's a fact. That's what they are meant to do. Whether it's flying jets, driving submarines, or shooting a rifle, they have to be ready to kill the enemy in defense of their nation. And that priority has been obscured these past several years by basically whether it's carbon emissions of our fighter jets or whether it's DEI initiatives in our manning, we have to return our military to focusing on combat lethality. Number one, our defense acquisition process, as you correctly pointed out, is broken. It is broken in so many ways, and we're seeing that right now as we're attempting to supply conflicts around the world. We don't have enough bullets, bombs, planes, ships, or people to do all of the above. So we have to return our defense industrial complex to a meritocracy, so that instead of just awarding a handful of big primes every contract, no matter how slow or bad they are. Right now we're watching Boeing every single day trip over its own shoelaces. We have to return some competition and meritocracy to our defense industry. So our products are affordable and they're getting made fast and they're getting made in the best possible quality they can for our warfighters.
Now, Tim Sheehy, Israel's on many people's minds. They have done an extraordinary thing with our F-35s and refueling. They've taken out the strategic defenses of Iran. This administration and the Democratic Senate has said nothing about that. What do you think about Israel's right to strike at the head of the snake?
Of course, absolutely no questions asked. They have the right to do it. And I personally think it's offensive for us to sit back and question a nation's right to defend itself. I mean, not only is it the height of hypocrisy, I mean, we were at war for 20 years after 9/11, striking anything in the world that moved that might even look like it might be bad for us. And now, Israel's been under constant assault. I mean, obviously, the Jewish people have been under assault and persecution for, over 3,000 years, but the specific assaults on the Jewish state since 1947 have been constant, literally nonstop. They're surrounded by enemies and attacked all day, every day, all the time. And then, the one time they choose to finally strike back in a strategic manner after the most disgusting, absolutely disgraceful, murderous attack we've seen in the history of their nation. And now we have, these pundits in the Atlantic and New York Times and the UN, deciding whether or not they have the right to defend their people. It's disgusting. I will not stand for any of that. Israel unquestionably has the right to do whatever it takes to protect their people, and I'll stand behind them all the time, no matter what.
Now, I want to close, Senator, Senator Sheehy, by talking about Native Americans. I don't know how many reservations you have. I don't know how many sovereign tribes there are in Montana, but it's always been a weakness with Republicans, and I don't understand why, because opportunity is what is needed. Freedom is what is needed. They've got to be able to do with their land what they want to do with their land. Tell me about the Native American population in Montana and your connection to them.
Well, no, it's a very important point, and they're about 7% of our state, and it's incredibly an important set of issues that we're facing right now. And you're absolutely right. Traditionally, our Native American partners have voted almost exclusively for the Democrats. We're seeing that change a little bit in many ways. We're not going to see, I think, a whole lot of shift this cycle, most likely, simply because Senator Tester, with his extreme seniority and his position in appropriations, has a very influential role over Indian affairs. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of, unfortunately, change for us. We've made the effort, absolutely. Actually, just a few days ago, I was sweating with some of our Native leaders, which is a really fascinating Native ritual. I was invited to partake in and did so. But what we have to do is unleash the ability for them to self-govern more effectively. We have to give them the freedom to grow their economies. And that all starts with safety and security. They don't have enough law enforcement on some of these reservations to enforce basic law and order. I mean, you want to talk about San Francisco and the California lawlessness. I mean, that's at a whole nother level. There are reservations that are millions of acres. I mean, the size of Connecticut, twice the size of Connecticut, and they'll have 2 to 3 to 4 to maybe 5 police officers to cover that entire region. That is not enough, not just to pull over speeders and help someone change a flat tire. That's not enough to in any way provide the safety and security these communities need to become economically prosperous. And what we're seeing is massive opioid, fentanyl, drug trafficking. We're seeing violent crime. Obviously, missing and exploited Native women is a huge issue all over the Western United States. So what I hear consistently from our tribal leadership is, yes, they want infrastructure investment. Yes, they want economic development. Yes, they want better opportunities for jobs and businesses on the reservation. But guess what? The first thing they need before any of that's going to work is a basic level of public safety so their men, women, and families feel safe on the reservation. And that's, I believe, very clearly a Republican priority for this nation. And I hope that they start to realize that a Trump administration supported by a Republican Senate and a Republican Congress is going to secure that border, which is a huge source of instability on these reservations, and make sure that their communities are safe.
Question, Tim Sheehy. I want to know your website again, but I also want to ask, do the native leaders ever ask you why we're spending so much on people who are crossing into our country illegally and so little on their reservations and their tribal communities?
They absolutely do. And I think as we see this movement of many of our native tribes saying, you know what, why are we sending billions of dollars to other countries when our own infrastructure on our own communities is collapsing? Why are we giving millions to illegal immigrants, free housing, free healthcare, free food, basically whatever they want when they get here, when we can't get basic services for ourselves? So I think that awakening is happening. I think the border crisis and the fentanyl crisis on the reservations is really an acute awakening for them to start looking at that issue. So yes, they are. And if folks want to learn more about our campaign and support us in these final days, tim4mt.com. It's absolutely critical we have the resources to get out the vote and finish this fight to the finish line.
Tim Sheehy, Tim for F-O-R-M-T, Tim, F-O-R-M-T.com. Thank you, Tim Sheehy. I appreciate it. Keep up the good fight. Look forward to seeing you inside the Beltway soon.
All right. Thank you, sir. Take care.
Now, Generalissimo, I'd like you to take the con, please. Promote everything, because I got to figure out what I did to the studio. Because I went, left the studio and tripped over something. I don't know what I did. I lost all my power in my camera, so I got to go fix that. Can you take over the con?
Sure. We can go back and play some more of the Donald Trump garbage rally in Green Bay, which was.
Please do, and please promote.
Which was
Dwayne's World and Highly Concentrated Hugh and everything else. And I will be back for Boris Johnson at the bottom in the next segment, but I got to figure out what I did here because this was human error. Can they see me right now? Can anyone see me?
Why would they be able to see you when you pulled the power out of your laptop?
Because I can see me on the camera. I was just kind of
Nobody can see you on the camera.
Okay, so I got to go to work finding out what I did.
Would be nice.
That would be nice. So take the con.
Okay. Let's go back to what Donald Trump actually said in Green Bay, showing the kind of the human side of Donald Trump, the one that regime media will not let you see and hear. Here is cut number 7.
With their open borders, they're going to destroy your Social Security and Medicare. They're destroying your Social Security and Medicare. They are going to do it, and I don't think they care. But I'm going to save it all, and I'm going to, more importantly and most importantly, we're going to save our country. We're going to save our country.
He also went on to talk about the speech at the Ellipse that Kamala Harris gave and how there was really only one common theme to Kamala Harris's speech, and that was, well, Donald Trump. Cut number 9.
But she spoke last night. And it was boring as hell, but I have an obligation to watch it, because she's our competition. We have to win. We can't take any. They would destroy this country. If they won this thing, they would destroy. You'd have 300 million people coming through, not just 21. Can you imagine open borders policy for the entire world, for every criminal in the world? But she talked last night, and all she talked about was Donald Trump.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I will speak about Donald Trump. 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 Donald
So you get the pith of the gist where this was going. He was having fun. Now the big thing is, can he stick the dismount over the next 3 days and get back to the basic question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Dwayne Patterson in for Hugh. Hugh will probably be back after the break if he figures out how to turn his computer back on. But we'll find out.
I'm so honored to be joined by former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Mr. Prime Minister, I don't know if you've ever had technical failures on your watch. I did read the COVID section pretty closely, so there were obviously things that bothered you about technology in the COVID failure, but I don't know if you ever had the BBC go down like this, and we're not even publicly owned. How are you?
How are you, Mr. Hewitt? Hugh, it's great to be on your show. Thank you very much for having me.
It is great. I enjoyed Unleashed tremendously. But I got to tell you, you're going to have to translate a few things for me. When Donald Trump took out Soleimani, you said he played a blinder. What does that mean for the benefit of your American audience?
So he played a blindingly good innings. It was dazzling. It was like watching the sun rise. It's an expression from sport. You play a blinder when you score a lot of runs, or you score a try that. So what he did was everybody was freaking out about this guy Qasem Soleimani being basically vaporized, if you recall, and they were saying, this was my diplomats in the foreign office saying, oh well, this is it's going to trigger all sorts of repercussions in the Middle East and unsettle everybody. He was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Quds Force. He was one of the most poisonous, dangerous people in the world, and Donald Trump had suddenly, vaporized him. There wasn't nothing left except his signet ring, and actually, it turned out to be an act of strength, and far from causing chaos in the Middle East, it served to quieten things down, to put Iran back in its box. And the point I make in Unleashed, and one of the points I make is that there's a lot of headless chickenism right now about the possibility of another Trump term, another Trump presidency. But when I look at what actually happened when I was foreign secretary, and then when I was prime minister, a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump did when he was in office was, in my view, eminently sensible and defensible, and that ranged from being very tough with Bashar al-Assad to giving the Ukrainians the types of weaponry they actually needed, the shoulder-launched Javelin anti-tank weaponry. So, kind of one of the messages is, everybody's freaking out right now, but don't freak out, folks. Look at what actually happened.
Well, let me read from page 266 of Unleashed. It is hard not to like a man who was willing, in the defiance of so much polite opinion, to stick up for Brexit, and it was hard not to chuckle when the Prime Minister, Theresa May, arrived in the Oval Office, only for Donald to ask her in front of reporters why Boris Johnson was not the Prime Minister. That's very funny on pages 266 to 7. I don't know that endeared you to the former Prime Minister, your predecessor, immediate predecessor.
No, well, I guess it didn't. But I mean, I think that, you see, the Brexit experiment it's kind of widely misunderstood. It was supported by people on the left of the UK politics as well as the Conservatives. It was supported by lots of people, lots of liberal people as well as lots of Conservative people. It was basically about freedom. And if you look at the United States of America, I don't think the United States would ever compromise its sovereignty, its ability to do things independently in the way that the European Union requires EU countries to basically be ruled from a foreign court and a parliament that they don't control in Strasbourg. So I was clearly thrilled when suddenly we had a United States president, and was our most important ally, who supported Brexit, and I couldn't hide it. Now he was right. He was right, because it had one of the key messages I try to get over in Unleashed is that when it came to it, when we faced COVID, and you asked earlier on about the technical problems we faced in COVID, we actually came up with a technical solution, and it was an amazing solution. We found a vaccine very, very fast, several vaccines, and thanks to Brexit, thanks to our legislative freedom, we were able to give approval to those vaccines, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, several others, before the 27 EU countries. And, I've got to tell you, that was a huge boon. It was a blessing for elderly and vulnerable people in Britain.
Unleashed is fabulous on a lot of accounts.
Well,
one of them
so
is
much.
Your description of Michael Barnier, and I have a very simple, direct question. Who's worse, Barnier or Borrell? Because Borrell is driving me crazy.
But I don't know Borrell so well. And look, Barnier, he was funny. I actually got on quite well with him when he was the commissioner for finance in Brussels. He's a very kind of classic, austere French technocrat. He wears these very clean cut dove gray suits with a little floret of the Légion d'honneur in his lapel, and he was very he didn't like my approach to Brexit, because I wanted to I wanted complete legislative freedom for the UK. I wanted us to come out, and I wanted no more control from Brussels. And he said, well, you could do that, but then you couldn't expect to have access to EU markets. And I said, nonsense. It's nonsense. The Canadians have a deal with the EU where they have complete access to EU markets. They can they have a very, very good free trade deal. Britain was not so. Why shouldn't we be treated with the same friendliness as Canada? And that was the argument, and it raged on for years and years, and finally we concluded it. But we concluded it on the terms that I wanted. And like, I think for American listeners, people got to understand Brexit. People think that the European project is kind of like the birth of the United States. You're creating a single federal unit out of all these different countries in Europe. And to a certain extent, that's true. But what people forget, and that is true, but what people forget is that Britain is a very old parliamentary democracy where people believe that they've got to be able to kick out of office anybody who's in charge of them. That's the fundamental thing about democracy. You've got to kick the bastards out. And under the EU system, you can't do that. You don't know who they are. They're sitting in Brussels. They're in Strasbourg. Who the hell are these people? How do you remove them from office? They're making laws. They're passing judgments about your country, and you can't do anything about it. That was the problem. And I can tell you something, Hugh. There is no way this great United States of America would ever submit to sharing its sovereignty or any kind of thing like the European Union. No way.
Even when a justice of our Supreme Court cites international law, it's a controversy because we don't want to cite international law. We want to cite constitutional law. Mr. Prime Minister, I want to say a small note first. I am a huge fan of Patrick O'Brian, the Sea novels with Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin. I've listened to him twice. I have never known where Bob's Your Uncle came from. And it turns out, you educate me, that Bob Your Uncle is about Salisbury appointing Balfour to his government. Now, the only question I have, the O'Brien novels are set in the Napoleonic War, and Salisbury shows up after Disraeli. Do you think Patrick O'Brien didn't know the origin of Bob's Your Uncle? He just knew that it was used?
I think he may be guilty of an anachronism. I think he may be. I think we need to investigate that. Tragically, I don't think he's any longer around to.
No, he's not.
To tell
no,
us.
he's not.
Now,
explain to me.
You've spotted a historical anachronism in a Patrick O'Brien novel. That's detective work.
Well, I don't think anyone. You told me what Bob's Your Uncle. I just took it as a phrase that meant certain thing, and you explained it's actually.
It was true. The Cecils and the Salisbury, that family is, of course, the great. There was Robert Cecil, William Cecil, back in Elizabethan days. The Lord Burleigh, who was Queen Elizabeth's great chief minister for so many years, more than 50 years, and then his son Robert Cecil. They were the beginning of the dynasty, and then it emerges again, as you've just said, in the late 20th century with Lord Salisbury, and then with A.J. Balfour. And it is true that they were thought being Lord Salisbury's nephew was a good thing. Hence, Bob's Your Uncle.
Now, I got to tell people, they will laugh throughout Unleashed. For example, at the line, "Don't miss the Amal Clooney, wife of coffee ad man George." I just laughed out loud. So you were not afraid to be funny. I do want you to explain to me the tutoring initiative and what it means. It was our job to get Jude the Obscure to Christminster, because I tried to look up Christminster. It's not a college at Oxford or Cambridge. I don't know what we're talking about there.
I'm sorry, Hugh. Okay, right. So there's a great Thomas Hardy novel called Jude the Obscure, which is all about
that part.
this
I got
guy, the stonemason, right? You know all that. Okay, so he struggles. His great ambition in life is to get an Oxford education. Well, Christminster is what Thomas Hardy calls Oxford in the book. And yeah. So and so my ambition as Prime Minister of the UK was to have opportunity everywhere. Look, the UK is very unlike America in this sense that it's a massively successful economy, but it's very, very imbalanced. So London and the southeast are hugely productive, but when you go elsewhere, there are problems, and there's less opportunity. Now, I believe all my observation tells me that actually human beings tend to have the same talents, the same energies, the same imagination, the same genius everywhere, right? In roughly equal proportions. If you drive around, and that's it's across the whole. But the opportunity isn't as evenly distributed. And so my ambition with leveling up was to transform the UK, make it more like America. America has an amazing, rich, and varied sameness. Every state seems to have a great university. Every state seems to have some kind of tech sector. It's incredible the strength of this economy, and I wanted to unleash some of that in the UK as well. So it was about unleashing us politically from
Well,
the
I thought it was, you described learning loss better than any American has because you made it personal about the fifth grade boy who's looking at the girl and misses something that they'll never be clear about for the rest of their life. And I love the idea of leveling up in education. I'm not sure I like the tutoring initiative, but I do want to tell you my great grandfather's from Saintfield in Ulster, and I went to Harvard. So it works in America. He had to leave Ireland to come here to get his great grandchildren opportunity. Has that changed in Great Britain?
Yes, it has. But the thing about the tutoring thing, why I cared about it, is that you see, a lot of the parents of the more affluent people have tutors, and they give their kids this advantage, and that's fine. But I wanted to try to help some of the kids who had potential but weren't getting the attention that they needed, and maybe we could have done it better. But all the evidence that I've seen from the academic literature is that tutoring is a very effective way of giving kids a chance and giving them a leg up. So that was what I wanted to do, and
it's
I
a
felt
fabulous
very,
chapter.
I'm glad
Now,
you-
Mr.
I'm
Prime
glad
Minister, I
you-
want to get to the hardest thing, which is
Yes,
Afghanistan.
sir.
When I read your line, Britain's fourth retreat from Kabul, I've actually read William Dalrymple and I've read a lot about the Afghan Brit wars, so I know what you mean. But did Joe Biden call you up before he announced the September 11th date? And I've quoted on the show already today, Biden's statement sniffed out the last remaining Afghan faith in the U.S. and the West on page 586. Did he call you first?
Well, if you remember what happened, he'd made various announcements, but we never thought that it would happen as fast as it did, and we didn't think it would happen so unconditionally. Because if you remember the Doha deal with the Taliban made all sorts of conditions about U.S. withdrawal, and those were certainly not fulfilled by the Taliban, by the other side. I mean, they kept attacking, they kept doing all sorts of things in breach of the agreement. And yes, so look, I mean, I think it's fair to say that America's allies were taken aback by the speed with which it happened. And I think there was a call between me and Joe. I can't remember whether he called me or I called him. I think I called him actually because we were so concerned about what was happening. And look, I mean, one thing I'll say about Joe Biden, I think I think once he gets an idea in his head, he really sticks with it. And he just got it in his head that there was no point in being in Afghanistan at all. And our guys, and I think the U.S. defense guys, thought that would be a mistake, and we tried to say that, but we were unsuccessful. And without a U.S. presence, our logistically, militarily, the U.K. presence wasn't viable, and that was why we saw the terrible scenes that we did in Kabul.
Well, let me talk to you about
It's
the
really,
Tory
really
party.
sad. So yes. So
Let me
go
talk
ahead.
to you about the Tory party. At one point, you said if someone put a gun to your head, you would have said, Rishi's going to be my successor. Well, he ended up being your successor, one removed after Liz Truss. But but you were talking to him about slaying sacred cows, and on page 486, you write, I gawped at him and then I twigged. I have no idea what that means. I gape, but what does twig mean?
Twigged means I understood. I grasped. I twigged. You twig something. Maybe I'm sorry. Don't you not have that in America? I twigged.
No, we don't.
I cottoned on. Did you say I cottoned on?
Yeah. Oh, you call him Dom all the time, and you call Rishi. I think any American will love this memoir, by the way, because you are deeply versed in British history and in American colonial history and all that good stuff. But I know what the argument's going to be among American conservatives. I didn't think you were a Thatcherite. Not many of my pals thought you were a Thatcherite. We love Brexit. We're all in for Brexit. But I don't like the Green New Deal. In fact, Donald Trump on this show, I've interviewed him 30 times. The one thing he didn't like about you is that you went all in on the Green New Deal. Are you still all in on the Green New Deal?
Well, Thatcher was the one who gave the great speech in 1988, when she was the one who sounded the alarm about global warming. You should read that Thatcher speech to the Royal Society, where she really lays it on the line about the threat to the planet. So Thatcher herself was the author of a lot of this, or the first UK politician really to take it seriously. My view is that I'm kind of with Elon Musk on this. I think that it's a fixable problem, and I think that capitalism and technology are going to fix it. And I think that we can do it in a sensible way that will generate huge numbers of good jobs for Americans, for the people in Britain. So that's where I come from.
Have you met Doug Burgum, our governor from North Dakota, who might be our Secretary of State? Because I spent 3 hours with him, and he knows this stuff cold, and he believes in small modular reactors as the future, not wind.
I agree with
did
that.
you get
I
one
agree
built?
We never did. So I worked so hard on the SMRs, the small modular reactors. As you know, we have them in the UK. We have the propulsion units from the Rolls-Royce nuclear submarines. So we have the ability to have a big rollout of SMRs. But and they kept coming into my office with beautiful models of SMRs, with showing how they could be. You just put one in your backyard; it would be fantastic. But for some reason, it's taken a very long time to get the authorizations, the protocols. Nuclear safety is extremely important, clearly. But we're getting there. I'm confident that SMRs will be a big part of the solution. But
let me close with some Tory politics issues. I believe I've been persuaded by Unleashed that Dominic Cummings undid you, and it's because the Guardianistas caught him. I believe the story he told. I also think you're onto something about when someone has to go through public humiliation, it changes them. Do you talk to him ever?
No, look, sadly, I think politicians have got to take responsibility for what happens on their watch, right? I was the prime minister, and advisors can kind of say stuff and propose stuff, but in the end, you take the decisions. I've got to carry the can for what happened, and I think the problem really, and I'm not disagreeing with some of what you say, but the problem, looking back on it, was that COVID made it impossible for me to talk to my backbenchers in the way that I really needed to do. Being a mayor of London, I had complete authority. I didn't have to worry about the guys behind me. Being a prime minister, Tory prime minister, is very different because it's not like being a president. Those guys can remove you. And I wasn't able to see them for like 18 months or whatever. Do you remember this whole nightmare? And I think that was very damaging, particularly since we'd been in power for so long. And you know how Tory politics works, all politics. The longer the party is in power, the more disappointed there are knocking around on the backbenches. The more people who've been sacked, who feel they're never going to get anywhere, who just want change, any kind of change, even get their party out of office, so that everything can be renewed and they can start again. And that was one of the problems I faced. But
you did note in the book in Unleashed that you were blessed with the greatest opponent in Jeremy Corbyn that could possibly be. But I want to ask you about one more policy failure, which I did not find in Unleashed. How is it after 12 years of Tory government, the BBC still exists as an arm of the Labour radicals?
I don't know, Hugh. It's unbelievable, and I put I I couldn't get them to change, and they look. I mean, it's a great corporation. It produces many wonderful programs and much wonderful stuff, but it is essentially a taxpayer-funded news gathering organization, and a taxpayer-funded news gathering organization is going to have an inherent bias to the left, and I'm afraid it still does. And I didn't have time to fix it. I don't think. I think the license fee, the tax, is not immortal. It will have to go one day because it's crazy, and that will. But what you don't want to do is stop the BBC from producing many of the beautiful things that it does. You know, the BBC produced Top Gear and David Attenborough and all sorts of, and the Proms and
Oh,
all
it's just
sorts
their
of
news
wonderful things.
organization I hate. I just hate their
That's
news
right.
organization. They hate Israel.
Well,
By the
I,
way, your
I
most
understand.
moving section in Unleashed is where you bring Bibi Netanyahu in and you pretend it's Balfour's desk and you pretend it's his pen and then Bibi catches on. But your support for the state of Israel is obviously deeply seated. Even in the diplomatic niceties of the Balfour Declaration, you are obviously a friend of the Jewish state. And I loved your line, your best line. You had the foresight to scatter your ancestors all over the world. I had no idea until I read Unleashed that you are really mongrel.
I am. And, I've got some English there, and and heaven knows what else. But I've got French, Russian, Turkish, you name it, Jewish, the whole lot. And I'm proud of it.
Well, I'm very proud that you stuck up for the Dursleys' house, number one. So everyone who loves Harry Potter is going to love the fact that you stuck up for the Dursleys' house, even if we don't like the Dursleys. But you also said something that's profound, and it applies to America. It's on page 470. It is very difficult in the United Kingdom to do anything fast and at scale. Well, unless America does some things fast and at scale, and unless our allies do some things fast and at scale, China's century is dawning. Can we change in time? We don't want a dictator. We don't want Xi Jinping. Can we get out of this bureaucratic morass?
Look, I mean, here's the incredible thing about your country. I used to be a citizen of the United States because I was born here, but it's still 25% of world GDP, right? Contrast American growth rates with European growth rates in the last 15 years. America is astonishing. Look at what's the growth rates today are pretty impressive, in spite of everything. And you go around America, everywhere you go, as I was saying to you earlier on about leveling up, there is innovation taking place. There are people with ambition, aspiration, who are doing this. And I tell you something else, Hugh. Former prime minister, you fly over a lot of countries. You have a lot of time to. You have the luxury of looking out of the window, and I look out of the window of the planes, and the thing about the United States of America is that this country is not only immensely rich and temperate and fertile and full of brilliant, beautiful cities everywhere, but it is, by comparison with China, by comparison with India, by comparison with Europe, Western Europe, it is massively underpopulated, and the space. Or I'm saying I don't want a place to be overdeveloped, but the space for Americans to develop and grow their economy and achieve their dreams is enormous. And so I don't.
Well, Elon Musk is inspiring all of us. Mr. Johnson, I got to close with this. Are you going to try for number 10 again?
The answer, Hugh, is contained in the pages of Unleashed. I think the answer is you should only do things in politics if you genuinely think that you can be useful. It's what Her Majesty, Her late Majesty, the Queen, said to me, and I think that's true. And at the moment, the most useful thing I can do is kind of set out my plan that I had for the UK, what we were trying to do, and what Brexit was about, and what levelling up is about. And thanks for giving me the chance to explain it today.
Well, Unleashed is a fabulous book. I hope everyone goes and reads it. And Mr. Prime Minister, come back anytime you would like. It's a great honor to talk to you. Congratulations on your many achievements. And man, you can write. I'm not going to ask you to recite ancient Greek, and do the Aeneid again or whatever it was that stunned me when you. I don't know your memory. Your memory is a gift from God. But God bless it, and thank you for Unleashed.
Thank you, Hugh. Thanks for having me on. Take care. Cheers.
You're welcome. Bye bye.